All right, we're recording. So I'm going to leave this screen and take the roll so you all know how we do this. When you hear your name, please sound off. Okay, Jeremiah Albert. Jeremiah Albert. Jaron Barnes.
Here.
Richard.
Yeah.
Breon Brumfield. Breon Brumfield. Deja Davis.
Here.
Kyle.
Here.
Sierra. Sierra Gaines. Tia Green. Is Tia here? Jordan Hampton.
Here.
Jabrion Hilaire.
Here.
Cove Joseph.
Here.
Renee Lyons.
Here.
Nyasenia Mafi. Nyasenia Mafi. Mr. Oreki.
I'm here.
Jasmine.
Here.
Jasmine. Okay. Ashley Sco.
Here.
Timothy Shorts.
Here.
Elena Taylor. Elena Taylor. Spencer Tillman. Spencer Tillman.
Here.
Brodre Turner. Chloe Veal.
Here.
Devontae Williams.
I'm here.
Ever Winston. Darlinda
Here.
Wright. Nataja Young. Nataja Young. Okay. All right, folks. So first of all, you all made it through the midterm. And I hope that the way the test was administered kind of relieved a lot of anxiety that people appeared to be having as we as the build up towards the exam happened. A couple of students said they were confused because the due date was Saturday at 3 p.m. But the way Canvas works, I have to load a due date. So even though you had 24 hours to take it, I had to upload the due date or the portal wouldn't open at 3. So the seems like everybody was able to take the test who wanted to take the test. And I think the results. I'm still reviewing the results, but people seem to do quite well on. Okay, I see Miss Brumfield has joined. Let me mark her present.
I'm sorry. I was in the last link you sent.
Oh, you
Yeah,
were.
I got 3
And
emails, so I didn't really know which.
yeah. I tried to forward all 3 of our meetings this week, and it did create a little confusion for some people. Okay, I see Elena Taylor has joined. Okay, let me see, make sure she's listed. Okay, is present. Okay, before we start, I just want to make sure everybody's here. Has Nataja Young joined us? Has Spencer Tillman joined us? Okay, has Nyasenia Mafi joined us?
He's trying to join. I just reached out to him. He was
Okay,
confused on which link to go to.
okay, golly. So that's Spencer, right?
Spencer and Natasia were in the other meeting. I'm about to send them the link.
Okay. Wow.
Hello, I'm sorry I went to the wrong one. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's no problem. I was trying to do something different, and it seems like it created some confusion. Okay, so how about Tia Green? Is Tia here? How about Sierra? I might have confused some folks, so I'm not going to mark them absent just yet. Hopefully, they'll get the correct message. I'm sure they're sending me emails. Well, what the heck, Barnes? But I was trying to be forward thinking here. Okay, I see Nataja's joined. Okay.
Sorry, I joined the wrong Zoom meeting that you sent.
Yeah, I sent too many links at once. So, I'll go ahead and take the L for that. So I'm not going to penalize anybody. Okay, so let me put on my share screen and we're going to move forward. Okay, we're going to move forward. All right, share screen is up. So let's get on with our next assignment, folks, as we, move through our understanding of art. And we're going to start with continuation of chapter 3. And we've made our way through abstraction, representational and non-representational art. So now we're going to move on to page 5 from the reading. And this deals with volume and mass. So all of these different schematics are going to play in when we move on to the best part of the class, because we're almost done with these terms. So these terms in language only go so far. After that, we're pretty much going to be looking at different types of artwork and making an analysis. So that's the fun part of the class. So we have volume and mass. So how does the artist use volume or mass? Is the work's volume closed or open? Okay, so we have volume and we have mass. All right, so the volume is the open space. That's the space. That's the considerations of the opening of the space, how much space you actually have, and then you have mass, which is what's filled in that space. So we have open and closed volume. All right. So you see this open cheddar cheese looking like form. That is what's considered an open volume or an open space. So when we look at art, and mostly sculptural art, we'll have this sort of presentation where you have openings cut into a material. All right, and then we have a closed form. So when we're describing a sculpture, first thing we're going to look at is it an open form or is it a closed form? So one of our terms is texture. Is the texture of the object smooth or rough? So when we look at this object by Meret Oppenheim from 1936, this is a fur-covered cup, saucer, and spoon. So we would describe this texturally as having a furry texture. All right. So if a two-dimensional work is a surface smooth or is there texture created by the brush strokes, how would you describe it? Is it something that you would want to touch? By the way, we don't actually touch any works of art in a museum. And hopefully, we can schedule a trip to New Orleans Museum of Art and everyone will be allowed to enter for free towards the end of the semester. And we'll spend a couple of class sessions there decoding and analyzing art. New Orleans Museum of Art is roughly 1.5 miles away from Dillard's campus, so we're very, very close. Does the work of art have any actual texture, or is the texture implied? That is, experienced solely from an illusion created by the artist. Okay, so if we were to look at this, if this were a photograph or a painting, it would be an illusion of texture, because the photograph doesn't actually create texture, it interprets it. Same thing with the painting. But if this were a sculpture and you could experience it up close and be within touching distance of it, we could say the actual texture of the object is furry. Okay, we'll move on. All right, so we have scale and proportion. Once again, these are ways we analyze art. We look at it and we discuss the scale. So this piece, image number 29, this piece is 12 and 5/8 by 5.5 inches. But when you look at it on the page, you could imagine it being much larger. And so the scale of it is very small. So that would be the first thing you would discuss, or the second thing you would discuss if you were analyzing a work of art. You look at the size of it. Okay, scale and proportion. Consider the scale of the actual artwork and how it relates to the size of the person viewing it. Now, in addition to considering the overall scale of the work, consider the relative size, the proportion of its parts. For example, if the figure is human, is the head unusually large, or are the arms abnormally long? Or is an object that is small in reality presented as larger than actual in the artwork? Or is the proportion balanced? So when we look at this figure of the Virgin Mary in this cathedral, we could say that it is proportionally balanced. She doesn't appear to be unusually large or small. The reason why this is so significant, this very small image, is when you look at the level of detail in it. So it's only 12 and 5/8 inches tall and 5.5 inches wide, but it has a very unique sense of depth to it. You can get a sense for the architecture of the space and how she relates to that space. We could know that it's proportionally good. Okay, are any figures or objects within the work larger than others? Remember that term hierarchical scale? If you take my art history class and you look at the works of the Egyptians and the Sumerians, they always made the leader or the person in charge larger than their subjects. Okay, so below we have examples of how proportion changes on vertical and a horizontal axis. You have the original form, which is A. When the width is reduced, the vase seems elegant and light, which is B. And reducing the height makes the vase seem clumsier and weightier. So these are just some examples of what artists use to demonstrate different qualities of a work of art. So if they take the original size and place it, it has a certain type of reference. If they abstract it or constrict it, that has a different sort of reference too. All right. Okay, now this is pretty interesting. Okay, this is another major step to analyzing a work of art. We have space and implied depth. Space and implied depth. Consider any techniques the artist uses to create a sense of depth or the illusion of 3 dimensions in a 2-dimensional work of art. So remember, 2-dimensional is a flat surface, like a painting or a drawing or a computer screen or a photograph. So when you're able to activate a sense of depth, you're creating an illusion that does not exist on a flat surface. So these are some of the techniques that you look at when you're doing your analysis. You look at size, overlapping, and position. So for example, we have what appears to be a structure on a elevated mound of land that appears to be closer. And that is because this green mound overlaps this teal mound, and this teal mound overlaps this gray mound. So using color and overlapping and size, you're able to create a sense of something being in the foreground and something being in the background, or depth, like you're looking back deeper into something, but it's all an illusion. Okay, so you have alternating value and texture. So alternating value. So you see how this image, I don't know if you can see my cursor, the structure in the background, it is less opaque than the structure in the front. Opaque meaning the image has full concentrations of color. So this is very faded because it's supposed to be in a distance. This is in a slightly closer distance, so the color is slightly more saturated. And then we have the near distance, which is more saturated. And when you look at, when I say saturated, I mean rich and full in color. And when we see the object that's in the front that appears to be closest to us, the color is fully saturated. Therefore, the eye recognizes that as closer. But if you look at each one of these phases, this is what's closest, this is the next closest, this is somewhat further away, and this is a great distance away. You see how size, overlapping, and alternating value and texture. We also talked about brightness and color and the use of atmospheric perspective. Okay, so with so this effect where you have something that appears to be closer to you, that's larger than something that appears to be further away, that is an example of perspective. And that creates that sense of distance and space from the front foreground object all the way to the background. Okay, isometric perspective. So this is an example of an isometric perspective. With the isometric perspective, you see three surfaces. You see the front, you see the top, and you see a side. If you look at a square object in front of you, like a book, you're only able to see the front, the top, or the side. You're not able to see the other dimension. That's why we call it 3 dimensions. Okay, so within an isometric drawing, lines are drawn in parallel and diagonal to create depth and isometric perspective. Okay, use of isometric perspective, linear perspective, which is on the next page, and light. These are some of the tools you'll use when you walk up or when you approach a work of art. And this is, see, all of these analysis tools are not based on you being an artist. These are ways that non-artists can walk up to a work of art and develop an understanding using space and implied depth. All right. Yeah, but before we do that, I want to pull up a painting and see if we, well, actually, let's just finish up the lecture. Then I'll pull up some examples, some other examples. Okay, so here we have an example of a linear perspective. Okay, this is the linear perspective as mentioned from the last from the last page of the reading. Okay, so when we look at linear perspective, we have a single point of reference. This is called our vanishing point. This is usually this is usually rests on the horizon line. We see this blue line. This is our horizon line. This would be what separates the sky from the earth, is the horizon. If you look, that center circular dot is the vanishing point. And these broken lines represent how the alignment works to create the illusion. So we see if we take a straight edge and bring it from this point all the way to the vanishing point, it gives us that illusion of this highway and these objects diminishing at one point. And it also works with the edges of our bridge or any other objects that are introduced into the composition. If you look at the right angles of any form or line here, they all go back to the vanishing point. This type of perspective is usually the easiest type. Not easy, but it's the least difficult type of perspective to manage, because this vanishing point can be put anywhere on this horizon and it can exaggerate the angle or perspective so you can capture your point of view. When I teach drawing, we always have students sitting in the hallway doing a vanishing point study, because our halls at Dillard and the Cook Center, they're very geometric, and it's a good process. So we're able to cover all the things within the visual spectrum above the horizon line, like the tops of these structures, as well as below the horizon line, like the street level of these structures. These are called orthogonals, by the way. So this is 1 point linear perspective, but we also have 2 point and 3 point perspective. So let's look at how a photographer uses single point perspective. This is the work of Carrie Mae Weems. She is a MacArthur Genius Award winning artist. And for those who don't know what the MacArthur Genius Award is, when you are exceptional in the arts, be it visual art, theater, or film, your work is noticed and you are basically given a check for $650,000 and you can do whatever you want with it. You don't have to necessarily make anything. You can buy property. You can do whatever you want with it. So her work uses single point perspective and light. So when we look at this, the horizon line is like the edge of the table, and the vanishing point exists somewhere right here with the artist herself. If we trace these lines to their destination, it's like about right here. This would be the vanishing point. And then we have everything else is cooperating with that single point perspective. So how has the artist created the illusion of light within the scene? Does the light solely imitate reality, or does it hold symbolic meaning, knowledge, or spirituality? What is the effect of light? The single overhead ceiling light in Carrie Mae Weems' untitled Woman and Daughter with Makeup creates an intimate atmosphere, highlighting a private scene between mother and daughter. The central position of the light in the image also creates a sense of space by emphasizing the converging lines of the edge of the table. So we see the light source in the foreground coming from this overhead lamp. We see the light in the middle of the table, and then we see the mother and daughter. And the lines, perspective lines, all lead to the mother. So the mother is the prime figure in this, and the daughter is emulating the mother. So this is you see how she has her own mirror, and they both have their own makeup, and so they're able to work together. So this is a very intimate mother-daughter scene. And in the entire series, she has about 25 images like this that highlight various private moments in her house. The man of the house comes home. She fixes him dinner. There's alcohol involved. There's an argument. There's a lot of different scenes she has that plays out in households, but she doesn't change the room elements. So you have the door in the background, three chairs, her in the middle, and different things happening in her life around her. So these are considered to be some of the most high quality photos from her series. But this is a way that light and perspective and and linear perspective are used in a work of art. So you have this very technical view up here, and then you have the human view of how the artist actually uses it. All right. Okay, we already did that page. Page 9. Okay, so we have value. Value is a word that we all recognize from our midterm exam, and it's been spoken of a little bit, but it hasn't been broken down. Okay, so this breaks down value. Value, are there any significant value changes? Okay, so value represents to the usage of light and shadow and their contrast in a work of art. So let's examine this. If we look at the area that catches the most light in this composition, and we look at the area that has the greatest shadow, those are our 2 points of contrast. And the value shows how the light moves across this surface and meets the darkness. So we have we have our light source. And anybody who's taken painting with me knows that this is something you have to kind of develop your own understanding of, because when we do a still life, we always have to be mindful of where the light source is coming from, which is pretty easy because it's a big glass window and the sunlight is coming in. But you have to, before you even get started, you have to get a sense of where the light is coming from. So these triangular planes make up the surface of this geodesic sphere. Each of these planes is illuminated differently depending on its location in relation to the light source. So these little triangles are geodesic, are planes or surfaces of this geodesic sphere. All right, so once again, so this is just showing this just breaks down the value in planes, and this breaks down the value in terms of chiaroscuro. Chiaroscuro is an Italian word that translates into an effect that creates an illusion of solidity and depth by using 5 defined values. So just like the image above, we have our light source, and then we have our highlight. That's the lightest point of contrast in the composition. And then we have our light, which is actually moving. This is the actual color of the object. Then we have our core shadow, or as some call the shadow edge, which is the darkest part of the object. And then we have the reflected light, which, believe it or not, is actually lighter beneath this core shadow. And then we have the cast shadow, which is the ultimate darkest part of the composition. So it plays out differently. So this is oftentimes, this will be the method that an artist uses to demonstrate solidity of an object. Okay. All right. So hatching or cross hatching is also a method of creating value. So when we look at these lines, okay, we have these diagonal lines. These are called hatch marks. And when these diagonal lines are interacted into a grid, it's referred to as cross hatching. And so when you're using hatch marks to create a sense of value, the cross hatching is your darkest element. So we have our light source. Increasing frequency of hatch lines implies darker value. So our light source is at the top, where there's a general sense of distance between the lines, and then the lines get tighter to show a mid-tone, a midway tone, and then we have our darker values. Overlapping lines or cross-hatching intensifies the darkness of the value, okay? And so that's our basic visual analysis. So I'm going to pull up a couple of examples from your course resources that we can use to demonstrate this. So I'm going to turn my presentation screen off right quick while I pull this up. Actually, I'm going to pull up a Charles White drawing. Charles White is one of the master illustrators of the Black art experience. Let me see. Charles White, illustrator. Charles White, artist. Okay, so I'm going to pull this up and I'm going to put the share screen up just so you can get a sense for how Charles White would go about creating these various effects. Okay, so I had this big image up, and now I'm going to put the share screen back up. Okay. All right. So can everyone see this image?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to zoom in as much as I can. I don't know if you're able to see from your, whatever you're looking at, but if you look closely, you have 5 tones represented. You know, that you have the very dark areas, and then you have the mid-tone, and then you have the reflection, and then you have the shadow. So if we look closely, there are cross-hatch lines at every single vector of this composition, cross-hatching everywhere. And if you, like, I've experienced some of these Charles White drawings up close, and he actually cuts the paper with the pencil. So when you look at it up close, you see a very, very active surface. But if you look closely, even with the way he created the texture of black hair, he was very consistent with the how the hatch lines were executed. So this looks very different from the last slide with the box at the bottom of the page, but that's just a very basic way of demonstrating it. But when you look at how artists actually use cross hatching, it's a very different deal. It can be personalized, basically. So we have the very lightest surface, which is the white of the page, and the eyes, and in this background area. And when we look at the texture of these barbed wires, they too represent the white of the page, which would be the lighter vectors. And then we have the darkest part of the composition, which appears to be the cheekbones and the hooding, that the prime female figure is using. This piece is very, very influential. All right, so I'm gonna pull up another Charles White image so you can get a sense for the cross-hatching texture of his image. Okay, that's not a good image. It's a low resolution. Okay, yeah, here we go. So this is a lithograph print of a Charles White drawing that he made. And even though these lines are not crisscrossing everywhere, these are considered directional hatch lines or hatch marks. When I say directional, the way that they're applied, it guides the eye in observing the details and features of the figure's face. So these are all hatch lines, but these are mostly vertical or directional hatch lines. The man with the pointing finger. Okay, we're going to look at one more Charles White piece, and then we're going to look at an Elizabeth Catlett piece. And I'm showing them in this succession because they were actually married at one point, and their divorce was real nasty, and she would often say bad things about him. Okay, so this is another Charles White print, and we see the hatch marks are very directional and intentional like the others, and we also see a very, very pale white of the page. He only is really using 3 tones in this. He's using the white of the page, he's using his implied hatch marks to show a gray area, and then he's showing a very, very dark black. But so there's no real rules to it. So I'm going to look up Elizabeth Catlett. Okay, so this is an example of a Catlett image. All right. She's very, very highly collected. So this is an example of the cost of one of her prints from 1983. And this is not like a huge thing, but her work sells for a very, very high rate. And she, the interesting thing about Elizabeth Catlett, she actually was one of the founding creators of the art program at Dillard. She taught at Dillard early in her career. She taught at Dillard for a year, and then she moved to Mexico. All right, so if we look closely at these marks, she too uses these hatch marks. I'm trying to zoom in, but I can't zoom in anymore. But if you see the texture of the collared shirt she's wearing, it's fully invested with vertical hatch lines. Let's see, we get another Catlett image. All right. This is one of her famous images as well. Okay, so once again, she has used, let's see, oh, great, we got to zoom in. So we can see her use of chiaroscuro in this drawing to demonstrate a sense of value. So we see the darker areas of the composition where the shadows would be, and then she worked her way across the spectrum of value from the darker to the grayer to the white of the page, but she doesn't really invest the white of the page into the figure, and she shows her contrast by leaving the headdress as the white of the page. But her drawings are very, very sensual. So this was made in 2009. And very, very valuable work. One of my mentors taught me many years ago that if you use the human figure as a subject, you can't go wrong. Now, this is the iconic Elizabeth Catlett lithograph print image, and look at her use of hatch lines in this composition. I mean, they're directional, multi-directional. Some of the lines reference the subject. So since she chose to use a straw hat, she created a hatch line pattern that helped to further define the hat. And then she had a general background where there was a light, subtle shift of value. Then you look at the shift from the shadow edge of her neck moving across the figure, and she defined all of it with lines. Okay, so now I'm going to pull up an example of a single point perspective work, and I'm going to pick the Last Supper painting by Leonardo da Vinci. Last Supper doesn't go to Da Vinci. This is a very scientific use of perspective. Actually, I'm gonna I want to show an image that demonstrates the perspective, linear perspective of the composition. Okay, so this is the Last Supper image, and when you look at it, as a visual analysis, you see most of the perspective angles lead to the central figure. And just like we had the image of the downtown city view with the buildings, all of the right angles focus in on this central figure, which is Da Vinci's interpretation of Christ. Then we have this horizontal horizon line. If you look in the background, you'll see the landscape, and this represents where that horizon is. So your single point perspective always works in tandem with your horizon line. And so this is a way you can create a point of emphasis in your artwork without really trying too hard. Okay, let me see. This is actually a better version of that single point perspective. So this is simply a analysis that someone made to show where the perspective angles were and the shape groupings that the artist Leonardo da Vinci was working with. So in this one, you see the central point is right above of the Christ figure's head. All right, oops. Let me, and then I'm just going to show the actual image of the Last Supper scene as it was painted. So you wouldn't really notice all of that, but part of the power of the image is that understudy. If we look at these upper right angle images, we see that they all agree with the vanishing point being on the Christ figure. And this would be the same way we would measure that as well. And then we have our horizontal background of the landscape in the background. That is our horizon line. And so wherever your horizon line is, your vanishing point is going to be somewhere on that line. Okay. All righty, folks. So I'm going to turn off the presentation screen. So are there any questions? Any questions about shading and value, hatch lines, implied depth? That was another thing about the Last Supper painting. The background that showed the line of the horizon in the background, that was at a more that color scheme was more washed out than the figures and the things on the dinner table. Anybody got any questions?
I was saying for like the hatch lines, I'm still kind of like a little bit confused, like when you showed the images, because I couldn't see it like clearly.
Oh, really? Are you on a cell phone?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna this meeting is being recorded, so I really need you to play it back on a computer so you can see the larger, because it's very hard to see those images on a small cell phone window. Do you have access to a computer?
Yeah, I'm at the DU library.
Okay, yeah. So are you on a computer there or on a cell phone?
I'm on my cell phone for right now.
Okay, yeah. So when I post this in the course resources area, you'll be able to take a look at everything you know, as it was intended. So how many people are still not able to, or still haven't made an attempt to open course resources? There's a lot of good stuff there. If you haven't, just let me know, and I'll, maybe send you a link that explains it. But everybody doesn't necessarily use it in their classes, but it's a great place to put stuff. And so this lecture will be published there within the next 24 hours.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I tried to look at the assignment that you just went over, but it says it's locked until the 26th.
Yeah, I'm gonna switch that off. Yeah, I don't know why it's doing. I'm actually gonna do that this afternoon, so you'll be able to review it this afternoon. So when I say noon, I mean like I have another class at 11. So once that class is over at 11:50, I'm gonna make sure I take that time block off, and you'll be able to review it. Any other questions?
Be able to review
I have a
what?
question.
You'll be able to review. You'll be able to look at this assignment and do it.
Oh, continuation of
Yeah.
chapter 3?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Someone, who was that?
Me, for the assignment that says the end of eating everything, you have the homework link on there, but the video link isn't on there.
Okay, I'll be sure to correct that. Thanks for giving me the update. Sometimes I'll post a video, and for some reason, the author of that video will they'll, maybe they violated a copyright law, and it'll get taken down. So I have another one that I can post in its place. So if there are no other questions, I'll make sure that you all are able to access the assignment in today's lecture, because it's very helpful to see these things while you're doing the homework. Because once we get through with the vocabulary and do the visual analysis, it's pretty fun if everybody has, kind of kept up and has a good working understanding of what we're looking at. Because some of the work that I have set up for us to look at is pretty interesting, pretty different. But we need to be able to look at it from a learned perspective. So if there are no more questions, you all enjoy the rest of your day, be prosperous, and get out in the sun, folks. You got to get in the sun. Give yourself an hour in the sun. It's a beautiful day to be walking the campus at Dillard. Beautiful day. Anyway, y'all have a great day. I'll see you on Wednesday.
Thank you.
All right.
You too.
Have a good day, Dr. Morris.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right.